Okay, the Education Minister has announced changes to the sex education curriculum. Well, the proposal is out there. So this was published earlier this week. It's going to be up for consultation for the next 3 months. So anyone who wants to contribute to it and add their thoughts to it has 3 months to do it on the NCCA website. But the new curriculum is going to cover things like pornography, consent, sexual orientation, sexting, all these types of topics that are included, and it's part of the Junior Cert sex education programme. Now, this is the first time, Gav, in 20 years that we've seen an overhaul of this nature. It's a long time overdue, Richard.
Yeah, I think it's 20, the year 2000 is when this was changed last.
So it's more than 20 years, actually.
Yeah, so like, I mean, Zara, you were covering this during the week.
Yeah.
So you mentioned some of the key talking points there, and obviously there was headlines on Monday morning about porn on the curriculum, and it sort of threw the cat amongst the pigeons. But maybe it did, and it ended up doing it in a good way because it got people talking about it.
Yeah.
So from what you were figuring out on this, what's been the general response from teachers and from students about how welcome this is? Because we've been hearing for so long about how important it is that we start to talk about consent and start to talk about pornography.
Yeah.
So what's the reaction been?
Do you know, I actually think the reaction from a lot of groups that I spoke to has been very positive, actually. I haven't encountered anyone, actually. I struggled the other day to find a counterbalance on it. I don't think that anyone really disagrees that it's time to create change on this. I mean, the reality is that when you look at the sex education programme, it's always been based around the reproductive system and puberty, which really just doesn't cut the mustard anymore because we have so many different relationships and, you know, there's so many different gender identities now that it just doesn't actually cover it. And we spoke to the Irish Secondary School Students' Union the other day, Rebecca Livingston, a lovely student. She's 17, heading into 5th year. And she said to me, Zara, like, my sex education ended after 2nd year. Like, really, we didn't cover anything. There was nothing about same-sex relationships. It was just completely kind of focused around the reproductive system, bit of puberty, and that was it. And she's going into 5th year now, and she said that the RSE class admittedly had been kind of replaced with, I think it might have been like a maths or Irish class to play catch up after kind of time missed during the lockdowns. But ultimately, you know, they're crying out, like students are crying out for this education. I think at the moment, the way the system is running, the reality is we're not sending young people out into the world fully equipped with the information they need to actually, you know, have healthy sexual relationships. And
I think that the point has been made by loads of people over time, like really good communicators on this, whether they be, you know, Dr. Caroline West or Richie Sadlier and that.
Richie Sadlier's book, by the way, is really excellent if you're trying to speak to your own teenagers about this.
But the fact is that you need to do it at an earlier age, because I remember, and I'm sure you're the same, when you hear from teachers, like they're seeing it in primary school schoolyards, you know, kids with phones looking at stuff, whether that's pornography or other sort of sensitive images, that this is becoming a problem earlier and earlier. So you need to sort of address it at an earlier phase, because, you know, if you think that this is a problem in late teenage years, that's kind of not where it is anymore.
Well, that was the thing that was kind of pointed to, Richard, is the fact that children are stumbling across this material online. They're coming across porn online, and it's very confusing for them. They don't know how to deal with it, and they're in a situation then where they're not actually able to ask questions, or there's no place for them to go with all of this. Like, I remember some really horrific videos being shown to us in school. I think I've spoken to you both about this before, and we've had a couple of messages in relation to that as well, where videos were shown to young girls that were really inappropriate. And now as an adult, I think back on that and I think how inappropriate that was. But you know, for you going to school, did you feel like you left secondary school well equipped in the mid-noughties in terms of sex education?
Not from the schooling at all. I went to a Catholic boarding school and there was literally no sex ed mentioned there. It was an all-boys boarding school, so maybe it would have been a slightly strange environment to be doing it. But it was a Catholic boarding school and there was no mention of sex ed or no mention of relationships. There was a little bit on the Junior Cert biology curriculum about the birds and the bees, but there was nothing about the emotional side or about consent or about behaviour or anything of the sort. And I went through primary school without having any formal mention of it either. I don't know why, because it certainly happens every other year. I remember being in 5th class, watching the 6th class guys go into a room next door where somebody showed them a video and gave them a talk to about how the world works. And some of them came back looking fairly pale, but that chat never happened in my year. So I went through 14 years of education without ever having any kind of sex or relationships chat. I don't quite know exactly how that's surmised, but it's possible. And that's a point that's worth making. It's possible to go through 14 years and not have any of those chats at all. And that's mad. And of course, yes, the onus ought to be on parents to make sure that their kids are equipped to deal with the social side of the 21st century, as well as just knowing the basic facts about the birds and the bees. But the truth is that in a lot of households, that doesn't happen. And I think particularly nowadays, when so much of kids' exposure to sexual material happens in a way that their parents probably don't even understand is happening and can't comprehend, you know, about the easy availability of the world's largest ever collection of pornography to any kid with a smartphone who knows where to go looking. It is a natural thing. And the most important thing is that kids these days grow up, if they're going to be exposed to pornography, which they are, that they understand that it's not really a depiction of what relationships are actually like, that it bears as much resemblance to a normal, healthy relationship as WWE does to conflict resolution. Like, people don't resolve conflicts in that way, and people don't express themselves or don't have sexual relations in the way that is depicted. And I worry, to be honest, that a lot of kids don't understand that difference, that they see a lot of stuff acted out in pornography. They think that that's just par for the course. That's what sexual interaction is like. And then that's how they bring their behaviors to the real world. And anything that steps in that acknowledges that porn does exist, that it isn't your good representation, it can only be a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well to see the reaction from groups like, the Rape Crisis Network and other groups like that, especially as well, because I think it's worth pointing out that the conversation can't just be about pornography. And this comes under the SPHE model, a junior cycle. Like, there needs to be discussion about the sharing of intimate images. Yeah. Like, this is something which happens, and there's plenty of apps which are, the most popular social and sharing apps, which, facilitate that.
And wasn't there a survey on Love Island this week, sorry, just to interrupt, and that they said that 60-something% of people admitted to sending a naked photo to a partner or to someone they were messaging? Yeah,
so I just think that needs to be obviously a big focus of it too. But Zara, I just wanted to ask about what other things are on it. Like, is there going to be stuff about gender identity, transgender rights and stuff like that? I mean, what sort of other issues are sort of covered on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's saying here that there's going to be a lot of detail in relation to sort of gender identity, the various different types of relationships, and a more open discussion around that. So I think, there's certainly a move towards, recognising that sex is not just about reproduction now, that there's, healthy sexual relationships are a very normal part of everyday life. So absolutely that is something that will be covered, and it's long overdue, Richard, given the discussion that's been happening, particularly in recent weeks in relation to trans rights.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to see how this goes, but it's interesting because I was hearing some teachers talk about it as well, is that, for SPHE over the years, there's actually traditionally been a situation where in some schools, teachers don't get any specific training when they're going into it, which just shows that there has been a complete undervaluing of this. And this is something which clearly has gone awry, where we have a situation now where people and kids are crying out for good information to how to handle things. Because if you think about how much has changed over since the year 2000 when this was changed, it's going to keep on changing as well. So, like, there needs to be a reactivity if you're designing curriculums for things like this, which bring into, the digital world, pornography, gender identity, all these things around consent too, that this needs to be able to be adaptive and move with times too.
All right.